Welcome, everybody, to the first ever Sandlot and the Crew podcast, where Sandlot Radio Show meets Wrecking Yard Baseball and Softball. I'm your host, Will Kiger, a.k.a. Wrecking Yard Will, and we are live from Wrecking Yard right here in Torrance, California, beautiful South Bay. We have owner-operator Mason Morioka to my right, former Division I and professional player. We have Mr. Nick Green, who led Penn High to its first ever CIF in his first ever year coaching high school baseball. Very impressive stuff there, sir.
Beautiful.
And next to him, we have Mr. Jordan Crispy. Not even sure why he's here. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Crispy played at Marymount. Is that how you say it? Marymount? Marymount. And also heads our 12 and 13 travel teams. Very good coach. Awesome dude. So today we are going to kick it off with the topic of, should Barry Bonds be in the Hall of Fame?
No doubt.
Let's go ahead and get Mason's opinion on this. Mason, what do you think?
So I'm going to say no. I know I'm not in the vast majority here, but the guy took roids. We all know that. Obviously he wasn't ever convicted of taking roids, but would the numbers be the same?
Innocent until proven guilty.
Greener, what do you think about the situation?
I mean, I think that at that time, everybody, it's hard to say who wasn't and who was. There's been many cases on it, and many people have been kind of clouded by it. So to me, I think that you had to accept what that error was. It happened. I mean, if they're in the Hall of Fame, you could always sit there and have an asterisk. It becomes a story to tell, in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. But I mean, I think that really it's no different to me than like what's happened with the opioid crisis. I mean, you have like pharmaceutical companies that have prescribed, pharmaceuticals of, things that people get hooked on that, take away pain. And then they sit there and they knew what they were doing. And now people are having problems, and it's an epidemic in our society. And then we don't look at those companies until now recently and go, oh, you're the problem. We've looked at people and gone, oh, you got a drug addiction. We looked at those people as having the problem. I don't look at any different in baseball, where baseball benefited from people taking roids, turn a blind eye. Yep. There's no way that you don't sit there. And if we're talking about sign stealing and how easy, like we've picked up on that happening, tell me how you don't see a whole bunch of guys coming to spring training yoked up, and baseball doesn't have any idea of how these guys are getting bigger. Numbers are going up this way. I mean, think about the Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. How exciting that was that year of baseball. I mean, every day checking to see if Mark McGwire or Sammy Sosa could hit a jack, and they were lighting it up. I mean, baseball numbers went up, revenue went up, and then as soon as somebody started doing a little investigating, baseball goes, oh, we had no idea. Oh. So,
now, was it exciting during that time, though, because they were number chasing, just like Barry Bonds?
I think individually as players, I think, you're number chasing. I mean, shoot, you're going for records that have yet to be broken. I mean, like, Roger Maris's record, Babe Ruth's records. I mean, those are things that, I mean, if you get closer to it, I think I'm no different. I think that Albert Pujols was trying to get there to 700 towards the end, staying on with the Dodgers, and, but I think that it was still exciting for everybody involved because it's exciting. I mean, when guys are hitting jacks, I mean, at that time, it was fun seeing the ball go out of the ball yard.
Yeah, I think it's still probably the most exciting year of baseball there's been in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, that was a year everybody remembers. Very interesting take there, Green. The comparison to the opioid epidemic, I've never heard anyone make that comparison. That was very interesting. And I see where you're getting at. Crispy, now this guy is a Giants fan, so I mean, we got to put a little salt on this one, but take this with a grain of salt.
No bias.
But Crispy, what do you think about Mr. Barry Bonds?
Yeah, plain and simple, he's the best player to ever touch baseball. So, but to kind of go on to my point, you had guys like McGwire, you had guys like Sosa, you had all these guys in the league taking steroids, not doing what this guy was doing. They all average 40 home runs, 50 home runs, was hitting a good 300, but no one was doing the numbers that Barry was doing.
See, but at the same point, would those numbers be the same without the roids?
Absolutely.
I don't think so. I think, here's my opinion. His eye-hand coordination, absolutely absurd.
That's why.
But would he have led the league, or broken records in the league of doubles, potentially, instead of home runs? Some of those balls that barely scrape over the fence don't go out if he's not on roids.
I saw an interesting stat. I don't know if it was post steroids or after steroids, but it said he had 2,900 extra base hits in his career. And the next guy below him was, I think it was like Miguel Cabrera at like 2, something really below that. But it was just the fact that he was able to, one, not only get those extra base hits at 2,900 and do it maybe before steroids.
I think Barry did himself a disservice by doing steroids, because if you look at the numbers, the first reports of him doing any kinds of steroids or PEDs wasn't until 1999, and the first actual failed drug test wasn't until 2001. And if you look at the numbers, the guy was already an 8-time All-Star before ever doing steroids. He had 3 MVPs, multiple All-Stars, Rookie of the Year, Golden Glove, Silver Slugger. He was on track for the Hall of Fame before he ever even touched steroids. So him doing it just put that big asterisk by his name. But we also do need to consider the fact that this was the era when everyone was doing steroids. I think Barry was getting pissed off because he's sitting there watching Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa get all the shine, and he's like, yo, I'm still probably the best player in baseball, but because he wasn't hitting the ball over the fence, he wasn't getting that kind of shine. And then all of a sudden, Barry's like, all right, I'm going to grow my head 3 hat sizes and start putting balls over the fence. But I also agree with Crispy that just taking steroids does not make you a great hitter. There's been plenty of guys in the game who've taken steroids and have not done anything close to Barry Bonds. And if you watch interviews with Barry's former teammates, I mean, every single one of them is just like, this dude is the best player I've ever seen. He does shit I've never seen anyone do. He was definitely, I mean, even Barry says, like, I was born to play baseball. Wasn't his dad a big leaguer? He grew up in the clubhouses. Yeah. He was trained to be a big leaguer from the time he was a little kid, and the stuff he did was phenomenal. But to Mason's point, he did cheat. It's against the rules.
Is it cheating though when there wasn't any rules against it?
That's also a great point. MLB did not have a rule in place at that point, and then they kind of backtracked once everyone was like, "Oh, steroids." That's when they were like, oh, yeah, and just started lighting everybody up.
So if we go back to talking about the player, how many home runs per season did he have before 1999?
Let's see this. It looks like oh, wow. He had about, 91, 25, 92, 34, 93, 46. So he had 46 jacks without steroids. Then he hit 37, 33, 42, 40, 37, 34. Still very respectable home run numbers, truthfully.
But what are we all trying to do though? Is as athletes and as competitors, you're always looking to gain an edge.
100%.
Whether it be with your training regimen, whether it be with your diet, like in all phases of you as an athlete, as you get to that type of level, you're looking for an edge. How can I stay longer in the show? How can I beat out somebody in my position group? How can I be the best that I can be? And when you look at that era, and if someone's going around the clubhouse and going, hey, I know of a thing that you could do, it's going to help you, with HGHing, with Pettit. I mean, like he came out, it wasn't because he needed to get stronger. It was just the recovery for him. Now, I'm not saying that was the same reason why Barry took it, but I mean, to me, it's you were trying to find a way to get better. At the time that was happening, there was no set rule against it. So how are you to sit there and tell all these guys who are trying to make a living, trying to be the best that they can be, the ultimate competitors at the highest level, because baseball is, I mean, we know football, life expectancy or career-wise, it's like 3.5 years.
Right.
Like with baseball, you could be a lifelong minor league player, never make it to the show.
Absolutely.
You're trying to get to the 1% of the 1%. I can't blame anybody at that time for doing what they had to do.
So even though it wasn't a rule, though, like, do you not look back at that as morally or ethically incorrect? Like if you were talking to a kid as an example, and you tell that kid, hey, it's okay to put steroids into your body because it gives you the competitive edge, even though there isn't a rule against it. Is that okay? And I think my answer to that is no. Why would we want to encourage something like that where it's like, okay, we're going to bend the rules just a little bit for you to gain this competitive edge over your competition. And now instead of player A, who is clean, has done all the work, that does, everything the right way, versus player B, who, now takes steroids, and now their numbers are very similar, but now player B's numbers start to go this way while player A's numbers still stay, roughly around the same as a good baseball player. So why are we rewarding something morally or ethically incorrect, when, it's all about the same when they get to that level?
I mean, the question would then be, okay, did you find that greenies are acceptable? Because that was an enhancement. Now, or would you sit there and go, oh, well, that's ignored. That's okay, right? Because that's been the argument is, oh, they took greenies. Well, steroids is different. Greenies is acceptable, kind of just help. So we should start giving greenies to a whole bunch of kids because that's acceptable?
No,
right? So, I mean, to me, yes, there's that ethical and moral dilemma, which I think that there was a lot of guys that faced, and there's guys that have come out and talked about that. I've seen guys, hey, shooting up, or they knew that their guys were taking roids and felt like, okay, that wasn't really what I would go down. But in an era that predominantly dominated, steroids dominated that year in time, I mean, I just think that for us to sit there and be so black and white with the issue, I think is a disservice of that time period for baseball. It happened.
I agree. I agree. Crispy, what do you think about the moral, ethical dilemma of this situation?
See, I just don't see why that should play a part in it because of the fact of we never got to test these older guys that started the game and laid the foundation down, like DiMaggio, like Ruth, like Gary. And I can guarantee they were taking something. I can guarantee it.
Doubtful. Maybe smoking a cig, but absolutely not any.
I've heard some things of pitchers going up there throwing perfect games on LSD and stuff like that. So,
I wouldn't be shocked if back in the day people were doing some stuff. I don't know
crazy stuff.
I don't know if steroids were around back then or what.
You know what Babe's worst was that he could afford himself a steak dinner so he could stay 250 plus bones, and so he hit the ball, it was going out. That's what his substance was.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm just saying we weren't able to test those guys back in the day, so it's how do we know that they weren't taking something crazy like Bonds and DiMaggio?
Okay, let me enter the gray here a little bit.
Okay.
If Barry were to come out and apologize or admit that he used steroids during X amount of time in the league, do you think people's hearts would soften for Barry and get him in?
I think the haters, yeah. I think the guys that already kind of believe it are just whatever. It'll be cool.
Is he still denying it?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I don't.
What is he, O.J. Simpson? This is crazy.
Exactly.
I mean,
the guy went from 195 pounds to 225 pounds.
His head grew like 2 hat sizes.
Come on, man.
I think
just ate his Wheaties, man.
I think if there's any case that shows that wouldn't be the case, that would happen, is with Pete Rose, because the fact that denied, it's all come out. He's apologized. He's written to the office, and the fact that he can't get into the Hall of Fame proves to me that the writers will never. And that's the unfortunate part, is that you have guys that, again, played in the era of time that they did, for better or worse, and everyone's had to go through, I feel like certain, I think it's where it's always get hard to compare eras, because there's different things that have happened in those eras. I mean, if we go all the way back to what you were bringing up with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, you didn't have, the Negro League players in there. True. So who's to say, what Babe Ruth's numbers or some of these guys that were the greats, they weren't really competing against the full class. But I can't hold that against Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. I can't hold that against the Satchel Paige. You have to look at it with perspective, and I think that's the thing where seeing that no one softened up against Pete Rose, I don't see anybody softening up against Barry, unfortunately.
We will save Pete for maybe the next segment, but final takes right here. Everyone keep them to about 30 seconds, 1 minute. So my final opinion is Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame due to just the incredible career he had, the fact that he was already an 8-time All-Star, 3-time MVP before, the fact that steroids do not equal greatness. There's a lot of guys who took steroids that never did anything remotely close to what he did. Also, the fact the rule was not in place at the time. Everybody was doing it. It was a time of baseball that's just what was going on. And again, there was a lot of guys who did nothing even close. I think Barry should get in. But yeah, you probably have a little asterisk by his name. Mason, what's your final take on
I
this
still
subject?
say no. I still say no. You know, I don't think with the steroids or without the steroids, I don't think his numbers would be the same.
Okay.
You know, I think that don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal hitter, just under 300 career hitter, an incredible amount of walks. I think a lot of pitchers were scared to throw to him, especially when he started putting up huge home run numbers. You know, even you mentioned that he was, you know, edging closer and closer to 50 home runs per season. And without cheating, if he did not take steroids and stayed on that track, I guarantee you that guy would probably be in the Hall of Fame. But like you said, you know, I think if he were to ever get in, there's going to be a big fat asterisk next to his name.
100%. Greener, what you got?
Kind of going off what May said. I mean, yeah, his numbers would not be what they are today, based off of what maybe the power numbers would be. But you can't tell me that, you know, he, off his first 9 seasons where we think that he was clean and the amount of all-star appearances and what those numbers would be projected out to be, that he's still not a Hall of Fame player. I think that he was so, there's a word I just can't think of right now. I think that he stands out because of what he did for the home runs, and that creates such a black and white feel for you. You yes or no, because you feel like, yes, he cheated. He shouldn't be the home run leader, and because of Hank Aaron doing it clean and Babe Ruth clean, all that. But I still think that Barry Bonds, regardless of the home run record and what those power numbers are, would have been a Hall of Famer. I mean, we were discussing right before we got on. If Tim Raines is in the Hall of Fame, like, you tell me Barry Bonds' numbers aren't better than Tim Raines or some of these other guys, and just take his first 9-8 seasons. You look at what that is to other guys, he's a Hall of Famer.
Who the hell is that guy?
Crispy, what you got? What's your final take on Barry?
Don't know who Tim Raines is, but
I don't either. But
yeah, there's no doubt about it. Barry Bonds, Hall of Famer, put him in. No one's touching what he could have done, even with steroids. Like, if you put everyone else on steroids and even out the stands or whatever you want to say, no one's doing it. You know, like base hits, stolen bases, even, you know, everything along hitting. No one's doing what he was doing. So
yeah, he had a chance to really steal a ton of bases. He was stealing a lot, and then that number dropped into the 11 stolen bases, 13. So there you have it, folks. That is our discussion on Barry Bonds, if he should be in the Hall of Fame. Put your opinion in the comments. Let us know what you think. Should Barry be in? Why not? Or why should he? Go ahead, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to have segment 2 coming up, segment 3, 4, where we're going to have different topics, discussing Hall of Fame this season, potentially where Shohei will land, some of these other free agents,
Giants,
discussing the playoff structure, MVP voting, all these things. You're listening to Sandlot and the Crew, where Sandlot Radio Show meets Wrecking Yard baseball and softball.